Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 10 must-start and must-sit running backs on the week. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. I would also like to ask that if you guys have any questions about week number 10, it doesn't even have to relate to the running back position, please ask down below in the comment section or in our Discord linked in the pinned comment and in the video description. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 10 must start and must sit running backs. We begin with my must-start running backs of the week, headlined by Jamal with 2A's Williams of the Detroit Lions going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Currently on the season, he is the running back number 12 in half PPR points per game, tied with Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson. In 4 of 8 games this year, he has scored 2 touchdowns. He has 8 total touchdowns on the season and has back-to-back games with over 10 half PPR points. Last week, up against the Green Bay Packers at home in Detroit, he had 24 carries for 81 yards. He had no receptions in that game, but in a majority of games, he sees at least 1. And last week, the snap counts were damning for the running back position. Jamal Williams, 38 snaps. Justin Jackson, 13, and DeAndre Swift only had 10. Now, I don't think there will be this large of a gap between Jamal Williams and Swift this week in week number 10, but I also think Jamal Williams has earned the respect to be a must-start player, especially against the Chicago Bears defense, who ranks 28th in rush DVOA this season. The Chicago Bears are absolutely fucking atrocious at stopping the run. I fully believe that we will see more DeAndre Swift this week, but that might not even be able to derail the Jamal Williams train, because a lot of these big games out of Jamal Williams was when DeAndre Swift was healthy and playing in those games, because once they get up to the goal line, they're knocking on the door. A lot of the time, Dan Campbell will give the carry to Jamal Williams instead of DeAndre Swift. My number 2 must-start running back of the week is Jeff Wilson Jr. of the Miami Dolphins going up against the Cleveland Browns. He is currently the running back 33 in half PPR points per game on the season, and he was the running back number 10 in half PPR last week up against the Bears in Chicago. In that game, he had 9 rushes for 51 yards, 3 receptions on 3 targets for 21 yards, and a touchdown. And this was his first game in a Miami Dolphins uniform. In that game, the snap counts for the running backs, Jeff Wilson had 28 snaps. Mostert, who was the lead back going into that game, at least it appeared on paper, had 26 snaps. So he out-snapped Mostert. In terms of touches, he also out-touched Raheem Mostert. 12 touches for Jeff Wilson Jr. and 9 touches for Raheem Mostert, and that was Jeff Wilson's first game in a Dolphins uniform. He arrived to the team on Wednesday. So now, imagine with more time, with another week of Jeff Wilson learning the playbook, how much more usage could he possibly get in this game? Now, I'm not telling you guys to dump Raheem Mostert, right? Cut him off your team or trade him for a half-eaten bag of potato chips. But what I am telling you is I think it is entirely possible that Jeff Wilson becomes the lead back on this team going forward. The Browns defense has been pretty hit or miss thus far this season, and I do think Jeff Wilson Jr. should have a very solid showing here. I've seen a lot of these platforms have Raheem Mostert ranked ahead of Jeff Wilson Jr., and I disagree with that a lot, so I like Jeff Wilson Jr. a ton this week up against the Browns. My final must-start running back before we pivot into the must-sit running backs of the week is Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Washington Commanders at home in Philadelphia. Currently on the year, he is the running back 16 in half PPR points per game, and he was the running back 8 in half PPR last week up against the Houston Texans in Houston on Thursday Night Football. In that game, he went absolutely balls deep in the Houston Texans defense. The Texans are the worst defense against the run by far in the NFL. Saquon Barkley's playing them this week. Obviously, he's a must-start running back, and I don't want to make these videos like the most obvious must-start running backs. So obviously, you got to play McCaffrey. Obviously, you got to play Barkley. You know, some people might not say that it's as obvious to start Miles Sanders. So in that game, up against the Texans, 17 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. He hasn't had a single target since week number 6, but even if he only gets 1 target or even 0 targets in this spot, I think he could easily dominate 50 Shades of Grey style up against this Commanders defense. The only downside to Miles Sanders is that Jalen Hurts has so much rushing upside that he could vulture a touchdown from Miles Sanders, and the fact that they use Kenneth Gainwell every once in a while, he's eventually going to mooch a touchdown away from Miles Sanders. But at the end of the day, I still do feel very confident when it comes to starting Miles Sanders this week up against a Commanders defense that has gotten a little bit stronger. Typically, the Commanders over the last couple of years, their defense really starts to catch on by the middle of the season, and they definitely look better when compared to the beginning of the season. Now we move to my must-sit running backs, headlined by Clyde Edwards-Helaire of the Kansas City Chiefs, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in Kansas City. But before we get on into things, when it comes to the must-sit running backs, I'd like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at DraftKings Sportsbook. They've been on your screen this whole entire time. If you're a brand new user to DraftKings Sportsbook and you click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment and you bet $5 on any sport pregame money line, you will receive $200 if your bet wins. Now, since your bet has to win, I would suggest betting it on college football because college football has the biggest favorites, the teams that, in my opinion, are more than likely guaranteed to win. Now, obviously, anything can happen, right? One of these teams that I suggest could get blown out. Obviously, nothing is a realistic lock 100% to happen, but in college football, these teams realistically should not lose. So, in my opinion, you should take your $5 pre-game moneyline bet, put it on Tennessee against Missouri or Michigan against Nebraska, and then at the end of that game, or those games, whichever one you choose, you receive $200 in free bets on DraftKings Sportsbook if that bet wins. Make sure you take advantage of it now before it is too late, because these kind of offers do not last forever. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire is currently the running back 24.5 PPR points per game on the season, but he was the running back 45.5 PPR last week up against the Les Titans on Monday Night Football. In that game, he had 4 carries for 5 yards, 1 reception on 2 targets for 14 yards, and this year has really been a tale of 2 halves for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. To start off the year, week 1, 20.9 points. Week 2, this is half PPR points, 13.8, 12.4, and then 21.9 in week 4. After that, it was like Humpty Dumpty falling off the goddamn wall. 5, 3.3, 9.2, and 2.4 fantasy points. So at the beginning of the year, weeks 1 through 4, he gets over 12 fantasy points per game. And then after this, he's barely even getting close to 10. So it's been a disaster recently for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And until things flip around, even up against the Jaguars defense, who's been pretty hit or miss, I want to stay clear away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. In week 9, the snap counts at the running back position: McKinnon, 52, Pacheco, 22, CH, 17. This is not a situation that you want to be involved in Kansas City. At number 2, we have Kareem Hunt of the Cleveland Browns going up against the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Now, I have seen a couple of bigger fantasy analysts talking about how they like Kareem Hunt in this game, and frankly, I don't see it. He's currently the running back 31.5 PPR points per game on the season, and aside from week number 1, Kareem Hunt has been a fucking disaster for your fantasy lineup. He has only scored over 10 half PPR points in 2 of 8 games. Now I know, but Nick, the Dolphins defense isn't the best. I know it's not the best, but you want to know who's going to take advantage of that? Nick Chubb, not Kareem Hunt. I'm still shocked that Kareem Hunt wasn't traded from the Browns. It really seemed like they were going to trade him. Week 8 up against the Bengals, 11 carries for 42 yards, 4 receptions on 4 targets, 4 for 4, like he was at Wendy's, for 30 yards. Again, Kareem Hunt isn't necessarily an awful player. But in terms of fantasy football, when you throw a guy into your lineup, you're not looking to get 8 fantasy points. That's not what you're looking to get. That's what Kareem Hunt will give you. That's what he's going to give you. But that is not start worthy in fantasy football. Final running back to discuss here. And this is, while it's one player, Melvin Gordon III, Sir Melvin Gordon III of the Denver Broncos going up against the Les Titans, the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. This is kind of all-encompassing of the Broncos' backfield. Currently, Melvin Gordon is the RB 46.5 PPR on the season, tied with A.J. Dillon. The team brought in Chase Edmonds when they traded away Bradley Chubb to the Miami Dolphins. So now, it's Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray, and Chase Edmonds. And again, I still do believe that Melvin Gordon's the guy. If I had a gun to my head, Nick, which one are you starting? I'm starting Melvin Gordon. But I don't want anything to do with them, because if Chase Edmonds takes away any type of a role in this offense, which he will, all three of these guys are going to be a fucking disaster. With it being Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon, you could in some weeks talk yourself into Melvin Gordon. Or Latavius Murray, oh, there's bye weeks, I gotta start him. Things could be worse, right? I get that. But things have gotten extremely worse because Chase Edmonds, I know he wasn't that good in catching passes in Miami. He was not that effective, but he is a good pass-catching running back. And this is just a scenario where I think Melvin Gordon's value has tanked to the bottom of the ocean. Week 8 against Jacksonville in London, he had 9 carries for 29 yards and a touchdown, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 23 yards. I just don't really see Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray, or Chase Edmonds, at least unless there's an injury, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries. This is a backfield that you want nothing to do with. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Hope you all have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.